Hello, welcome back. Waterboys Rugby Podcast, what episode is it now? 3, I think. 3, already on episode 3, going strong. We're still going at it, we haven't given up. As you can see, we've got a Blue Bulls flag here, for obvious reasons. So congrats to the Bulls for winning the Currie Cup, obviously. Yeah. We're going to chat about the semi-final, we're going to chat about the final, a little bit of Six Nations as well. We're going to touch on that. And we're also going to respond to some of your voice notes that have come through. We got a lot that came through. We can only play 2 just because of the time that we have, but we're looking forward to that. So, Mark, first impression about the Currie Cup semi-final. Let's first talk about the Province and Sharks game. What were your feelings watching that?
It was an absolute ball fest. Province was shocking, really, really shocking. And as a Province supporter, it's very upsetting. Cohen Bosch was outstanding. We lost that game in the first 10 minutes because we give away penalties in their half and they still somehow get 9 points. Yeah. It's ridiculous. So congrats to him for being so good at kicking. But
Cohen was amazing with the beat.
Yeah, he was good. But Province there was just nothing. There was nothing, no attacking flair, no physicality on defence. We got dominated at set piece. We were missing lineouts. It was pretty poor and pretty hard to watch. And hopefully we come right. I don't know what state the union is in, but the game itself was, you expect more from a Province semi-final team.
Of course. It was also a very physical game, like very cheeky. There was a lot of pushing and shoving. And it's kind of cool to watch in a derby. Yeah. A South African Rugby derby, obviously. And Cohen, as I said, was so good with the boot. Really, he's impressed me so much. A lot of people... Let's actually chat a little bit about Cohen, because people have very mixed feelings about him, right? Some people love him, some people hate him. His kicking stats are brilliant, right? He's got Patrick Lambie as his kicking coach, and clearly he's done really well there, because the guy can kick from 60 meters out. He's amazing. But people criticize him for his tackling stats. His tackling stats are very bad. They've gotten a little bit better recently, but his tackling stats for 2020 were looking at around 50% tackle success rate. And if you compare that to someone like Morné Steyn, who's a lot older, yes, he's bigger, but Morné Steyn's reaching at about 86%.
Yeah, so my opinion on Cohen Bosch as a kicker is brilliant, a goal kicker. But his open play is nothing to write home about for me. I don't think he's the most exciting rugby player in the world. He's a good solid fly half, but he's not. I struggle to see the X factor, and like you say, those tackling stats, I didn't know that. That's pretty poor. 50% of your tackles, even as a fly half, is pretty poor. But he's certainly not a bad player, and he will get better. And his kicking is, you always want someone in your team that can knock them over from 60 meters. Just his open play. This season hasn't quite turned me on, but he's certainly got room for improvement. He's got potential to be a Springbok fly-half in the future. Yeah,
it's tough because if you compare it to someone like Andre Pollard, right? He's the complete. Yeah. He's the
ultimate fly-half.
The ultimate fly-half. He can tackle. He's physical. He's a big guy. He can carry, break lines. He can kick amazingly. Yeah. So Cohen's obviously not that. Back in the day, you could get away more with being just a kicker as a fly-half, like Naas Botha, one of the best Springbok fly-halves of all time, but he couldn't tackle. Yeah. He was a terrible tackler, but with the boot, he was amazing. In today's game, you can't really get away with that as much, but I agree with you. I think he's still very young. Yeah. Early 20s, still very young. There's a lot of time ahead of him. He can get better in terms of tackling. He can get bigger as well. Maybe if he hits the gym a bit more. Yeah. But I really like him as a tactical kicker in open play as well. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's done quite a lot of special things with the boot in open play, not just place kicking.
Well, the important thing to consider as well as the competition, and Damien hasn't found his feet yet at all, and so you're asking about who's going to be our next Springbok fly-half. If that is someone's consideration, then he's certainly in the talks, because Alden Jantjies has never really performed in a Springbok jersey, and we're looking for someone. Pollard is injured at the moment. If someone had to play a Springbok fly-half tomorrow, it might be Cohen Bosch. So that is an interesting debate. His kicking, as we've said, tactical, place kicking, everything is brilliant. I would like to see a little bit more excitement or just something extra, but it does come sometimes. So I think it'll come with time that he will learn to manage a game, and Yeah.
Alton Yankees, obviously because there's concerns that Handré Pollard wouldn't be ready for the British and Irish Lions tour, and a lot of people were saying that Alton Yankees is the guy to replace him. But I agree with you. I think it's kind of time to give someone else a turn. Alton Yankees has been there for a long time, and he's done amazingly in Super Rugby.
Yeah,
Super Rugby.
He never made the step up.
Yeah, he was never consistently really performing at a high level for the Springboks. So I think they should give someone else a chance.
Would you pick Morné Steyn for the Lions tour if there was no one else?
If it was a month from now, yeah, I would rather have Morné Steyn there. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's an interesting debate because, like you say, you want to blood some new youngsters, but in a Lions tour, it's just 3 games. And if Morné Steyn is the best man for the job, which at the moment he's the fly half for the winning team of the Currie Cup, he can steer the ship. I think I might tend to agree with you, but it would be quite funny to see Morné Steyn playing the Springboks again. It
would be cool. He's 36, but a lot of people are saying he could make the team again. He's obviously not as physical as Handré Pollard, but I would say he's still more physical than Currie and Bosch. And he, as you say, obviously has experience. He's done it before. He's won a Lions tour before. That would be really cool to see him play again. Obviously, there's other guys like Johan Goosen, but I don't know about you. I think Johan Goosen, sort of his international career has been ruined a bit with him moving positions all the time. We saw that with Ruan Pienaar. Ruan Pienaar was playing scrum off, then he was playing fly off. He was playing he was changing positions too much that he could never really specialize. And now he's back at scrum off. So Johan Goosen, I'm concerned that's maybe a problem. He was considered by many to be like the next.
But he faded away very much after going overseas and, like you say, changing positions. So yeah, he was one of those prodigies that never quite filled the boots that he was meant to fill, I think.
Damien Willems is obviously there as well. Yeah. Do you prefer him at 10 or 15?
It's tough because he just seems to be low on confidence at the moment, and I think he's an exceptional talent. But the Stormers look better with Tim Sweel at fly half, to be fair. And I just think if you're low on confidence, 10 is a horrible place to play because you have to steer the ship. So at the moment I'd have to say 15, but it depends. I mean, sometimes the 15 never sees the ball, and you want someone like Damien on the ball because he's got exceptional feet. He can throw the magic pass. So at the moment I'd say 15, but I think I would like to see him at 10 in the future.
Yeah, people are giving him a really hard time. He's also really young. He's our age. He's very talented. He's just going through a bad phase, and he doesn't have to be able to place kick. There can always be someone else. So Francois Steyn, he could also slot in at 10, I suppose.
Francois Steyn is brilliant. He's the type of player you want on your bench every day of the week because he gives you a 6-2 split with the forwards and the backs because he can play 10, 12, fullback, probably wing in his younger days, but maybe not anymore. There's a lot of talent, a lot of old boys who are still showing that they've got it. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah,
there's obviously Tim Sweel there as well. There's Tiaan Schoeman, who did quite well for the Cheetahs. So I think we maybe are lacking a little bit in depth in terms of fly-offs. We need more in that department probably.
Well, I just think we're lacking someone who we have confidence in to lead us at fly-half, because I would love to see Damien playing for Springboks, but if it was the final test against British and Irish Lions and I saw Damien was starting, I'd feel a bit nervous because I think he's been a bit up and down and a bit edgy, and he needs to first become a more solid, consistent player before I'd be comfortable having him as the Springboks fly-half.
Yeah.
So it is an interesting time to see, are they going to try and get him in and see and learn the hard way, throw him into the pit and see if he can deal with it, or are they going to go for the experienced guys that we know? It's going to be interesting. Yeah,
but credit to the Sharks. I mean, they played well. I would say they deserved to make the final.
Yeah.
So that was obviously a good game.
They were much better than Province. Province were poor. They didn't deserve anything from that game.
Both teams were quite inconsistent throughout the competition, but Sharks played better rugby. So let's talk about the Lions and Bulls game. So that semi-final, it was an extremely hot day. Extremely hot day where they played, and it was also a very physical game. The Lions came out with a lot of heart, and they really were pushing to win that game. The Bulls just were so good on defense. They kept crushing everything that the Lions threw at them, and that eventually forced errors. It's a typical rugby scenario: good defense forcing errors, and the Lions started knocking on a lot, and they weren't able to create anything because of the strong defense. A lot of errors. I feel one or two of their decisions weren't the best. They should have maybe gone for a maul, but they chose not to go for a maul here and there. And then, obviously, later on, there were so many penalties in the second half, which threw off their game. And again, that's strong Bulls defense forcing penalties. The only tries that the Lions scored, not to take anything away from them, because the 2 tries they scored were brilliant, but it was from Bulls' mistakes. Yeah. So it's good for them that they took those opportunities. I was very happy with the Bulls. I felt they deserved to make
well, the Bulls deserve to make it just based on their whole season. They've been the most consistent team, so definitely deserve to be in the final, I think.
Yeah, Tiaan Swanepoel, he was amazing for the Lions. He did some great kicking. Yeah. He could be another potential Springbok maybe one day.
Certainly, I agree.
But the Lions really did well to turn their season around, because they started all the way from the beginning of 2020 in Super Rugby. They were doing badly. They lost a lot of their players. They lost their coach.
It's never quite been the same since Ackerman left the Lions. Yeah, to be fair.
It was okay the year after with Swayze de Bruin. They still made the final, but they did a lot worse than the previous year. They won fewer games. So, yeah, it's sad, but they really are turning things around, and they were a different team towards the end of the season. And I think they started playing some of the most exciting rugby, actually. They really were taking a lot of chances with the ball in hand. I have a few question marks around the leadership in the team. Alton Jantjies was the captain, and obviously he's been a great servant to Lions Rugby. He was there for many years, did really well, but I'm not 100% sure if he always makes the right decision and if he has that in him.
Yeah, I don't know. We go back to when he plays for the Springboks. He's not as good as when he plays for the Lions. So maybe he's a follower, not a leader, or maybe he just feels more comfortable just to be the fly-off and not to have any added pressure. Like, you know, when you play for the Springboks, it's a lot more pressure than just playing for the Lions, and being captain, you have other things to think about other than just your game. So maybe he's the type of guy that just wants to be comfortable playing 10, steering the ship, and not have anything else to worry about. But yeah, he certainly doesn't inspire like Dwayne Vermeulen does, you know? Yeah,
obviously, I think Jaco Kriel is more of a preferred captain, but he left and then Jantjies became captain, and then you know, you can't just come back and become the captain again. Warren Whiteley is an amazing captain, but he's out. He's one of the coaches at the moment. So, but I don't think we should write with the Lions. I think they could come back in the next few seasons. Our biggest problem is we just need to keep players in our teams. It's so difficult every year starting with a new team, new players, having to rebuild. You know, that's really difficult. So I'm seriously hoping that in the Pro 16, the guys can just, the teams can just keep their players, and maybe we can actually see them do really well.
Yeah, well, you can see now there's some transfers of some of the province boys leaving overseas, and it's very disheartening to see the talent that we're letting go, because these are the guys we want to see playing for our provinces, and to see them go overseas, and it doesn't seem like we're trying hard enough to keep them is very, very sad. But hopefully, like you say, in the Pro 16, we can keep some of the boys, we can build some consistency in the squad and have players playing for the same team for their whole career. Would be nice.
Yeah. So let's chat about the final, okay? And let's also chat about the Sharks and the Bulls as teams in general, right? So the Bulls were amazing this season, right? And they were even really good, missing quite a few key players. Stedman Gans didn't play in the final. And I think 1 or 2 games before that as well. Gio Aplon got injured quite early on in the season. Obviously, he's an older player, but he was still one of the key players. Jake White really is amazing, what he's done in that team.
Yeah, well, just his ability to lure world-class players back to the Bulls has been amazing. I mean, we cannot underestimate the importance of someone like Dwayne Vermeulen, and last season with Schalk Brits, or 2019 with Schalk Brits, bringing Nizam Carr back, Morné Steyn, and some...
Dwayne Vermeulen.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. So that already shows you that he's a good coach, because players are willing to leave their big contracts earning euros to come and play for him at the Bulls. And he's tied it all up very nicely. He's got all the big players playing together. They're all in the same wavelength, and they just look difficult to beat. You look at the Bulls and you think, where are their weaknesses, and it's difficult to find them.
Exactly. They're physical, extremely physical team. They've got a good back line who can really create a lot of magic.
Cornel Hendricks playing centre, who has been a wing his whole career. And he's a bit of a has-been. No one speaks about him, and then he comes and he's playing phenomenally at inside centre. So that tells you a lot about Jake White and his ability to get what he wants out of players.
Obviously, the experience in the team is really good. We spoke a little bit about Morné Steyn. When he joined the Bulls, I think everyone was expecting him to be like a mentor.
Yeah.
But he's now the starting 10. He's playing brilliantly. Chris Smith? Chris Smith, right? Yeah. Chris Smith, one of the two. Yeah. Anyway, he's doing really well. The understudy fly-off, amazingly. Let's chat about the kicking in the final. That was a bit crazy, eh?
Yeah, well, we've just been talking up Currie and Bosch and now Wally kicked in the semi-final, but in the final to see Currie and Bosch and Morné Steyn missing kicks like that is crazy, because the Sharks could have won that game pretty easily if Currie and Bosch had got his kicks, and to see two world-class fly-offs, or Morné Steyn being a veteran fly-off, just missing easy kicks is very strange, and it's quite unforgivable in a final. So obviously the pressure got to them, or maybe there was wind or whatever, but it was quite strange to see something like that.
Even stranger being in front of an empty stadium, because maybe the pressure must have maybe gone to them or something, or maybe it didn't actually feel like a final because it was in front of an empty stadium, and maybe it was difficult to actually get that playoff mindset.
And the lightning interference obviously threw everyone off. I mean, us as spectators was weird. There was a short half time and a long break in between the first half, and it must be weird for them to get, you do your warm up, you get psyched up, you go out, and then 20 minutes later you're back in the changing room for, you don't know how long, 20 minutes, half an hour. So that must have thrown them off a bit, the concentration levels.
It was like watching the 3 Lord of the Rings movies in a row. It just kept going. It was a long game. But yeah, I felt that before that lightning incident, it was very slow and boring. But after that, the game started to pick up and actually started to get quite exciting. There were a lot of errors, as we said, a lot of missed kicks, but it was I wouldn't say it was necessarily extremely exciting rugby, but it was dramatic. It was dramatic just because with the lightning happening and then these guys missing the kicks you wouldn't expect, and then it going to extra time and you not knowing what's going to happen. So it was dramatic. It kept me at least out of my seat a bit, at the edge of my seat. So I enjoyed that.
And Jaco Paper provided some entertainment for us. Some nice cheeky comments.
Oh, that was so funny. He's really become the new Nigel Owens. But I think everyone knows that it's not necessarily the domestic rugby we're used to. It's definitely not the usual standard.
Yeah, but there's no fans, so we have to also give them some leeway, because it's difficult to get so pumped up when there's not 50,000 people screaming for you, and it's understandable there's a slight drop-off.
Yeah, and I think the Bulls, they purposely have maybe adapted their game plan to be a little bit more conservative for the playoff games, because I think they know they can dominate the other teams physically. So I think that's what they did going into the playoffs. But I think there's a lot of potential they have in playing running rugby as well, which we've seen. But I think in the Pro 16, the Rainbow Cup, which we know is normally quite a boring tournament to watch, it's not always the easiest to watch. How do you think the Bulls will do going into this competition? Do you think they'll do well?
I do think so, because that competition is not the most entertaining competition, and there's like the Italian teams are very weak, the Scottish teams are quite weak, and very often you'll see the Welsh and the Irish teams, they don't often play their strongest sides every week. Like if it's the Six Nations on, then the Irish guys are all rested and you play like a Leinster B team. And I think if the Bulls can keep this group of players together, I think they could dominate that competition, along with, Leinster is a powerhouse, but I think that they'll definitely make the playoffs in those competitions and possibly win it. I think so. Yeah,
I think, as you said, the key is if they can keep their players. They have to keep their players. People don't understand. Some people don't understand like how serious this is. You really need to keep your players.
Well, obviously, Morné Steyn and Dwayne Vermeulen won't be playing forever, so those guys will retire and be instead of getting sold or whatever. But the youngsters coming through who learn from these guys, they need to keep them as well. You can't let the youngsters, like you say, Chris Smith, who's been playing under Morné Steyn, he will learn the trade, and we don't want to lose him now to an overseas club, because he could be the next Morné Steyn one day.
Yeah, but I'm hoping that, and it seems this way, because I've been hearing of quite a few Lions players that are leaving, Marvin Ori, for example, but there's not a lot of Bulls players that are leaving. So I'm really hoping that Jake White is making them want to stay.
Well, there's also talk that Francois Hoogaard might be coming to the Bulls, which would be a great signing.
Marcel Coetzee, he's coming, and Johan Goosen.
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome, really awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. So there's almost like a vibe that they want to be a a champion team.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that. I would love to see them do well. Might take a little bit of time to adapt to the new conditions, but I think they can do it. I trust Jake White with almost anything. I think if he took over the Springboks now, he would still do an amazing job.
Well, I trust any World Cup winning coach, to be fair. It's not an easy thing to win a World Cup, so him and Rassie, they can perform heart surgery on me. I trust them so much.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. So overall, we've been very impressed with the Bulls this season. And the Sharks, let's chat a little bit more about the Sharks, but before we do that, we're going to play some of your voice notes. We're going to respond to them. So we've got 2. Let's get right into the first one.
Yes, gents. In terms of the Cup final, I'm a Sharks fan, so I'm really bummed that the Sharks didn't get it. But I just wanted to hear from you guys what you guys think with the whole American company buying a stake in the Sharks. What do you guys think that's going to mean for the club, I think financially it's going to be like a big W for us. Yeah,
that deal is definitely big news when that happened. There was a lot of talk that the Stormers were going to get that deal, Western Province, but then it went to the Sharks. That money is always a good thing in professional sports.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what's going to happen with the other unions now. One thinks they would have to follow suit because the Sharks will now start, like Siya Kolisi could be going to the Sharks. Will they attract other players? Will other big names come from overseas to play for the Sharks? Will they attract players from other unions? They could be the next competitors for the Bulls in terms of signing these world-class players. Will the Bulls be sold to an American company? Because now the Bulls will need more money to match the Sharks. Will Province join the party? So I think this means that South African rugby could be moving to that, that way where we start, it's more all going to be about the money from big companies. But if that means we can see entertaining rugby with big name players, and so be it.
Yeah, I mean, money is awesome. And, there's obviously a lot of negative things happening in South African rugby, like us losing a lot of players and things like that. But surely, if we are able to attract so many big names back to South Africa, like the ones we mentioned earlier in this podcast, that I think is a promising sign. Maybe there's more we're not seeing.
Yeah.
So I think Rassie is doing amazingly. Yeah. It's better that he's in this position as director of rugby than head coach, because he's actually improving the whole system, not just the team, not just the surface. Yeah. So there's also talk of Ches and Colby maybe signing for the Sharks. I don't know if that was just a rumor, but could be. So I think definitely the Sharks will improve. They're already a really good team. Yeah. They could have stood a very good chance of winning the Super Rugby in 2020. They were winning against New Zealand teams away from home, which is very difficult to do. So I think they stand a good chance to keep getting better, and they're keeping most of their players, I think. So that's very positive. I'm, as Mark said, I'm hoping the other teams follow suit, and I think Western Province will suffer a bit now. Losing on that deal, they'll lose quite a few players.
Yes, like all these flippant South Africans in the Six Nations. But I suppose it makes it easier for us South Africans because we can just support the team with the most South Africans on the field.
Okay, so obviously the Scotland won against England, which was big news. And obviously for us South Africans watching, one of the biggest things that stood out was all the South Africans playing there. We have spoken about this in previous podcasts. Mark, what was it like for you seeing a South African Duan van der Merwe scoring the winning try in such a big match?
I had a good laugh when he scored because we just spent the last podcast talking about him for half an hour, and then he ended up scoring for Scotland, which is just ironic. And this goes back to our point that we made, like the Scottish fans couldn't care what country he was born in. If he scores the winning try against England, I think the Scottish fans are only too happy. So it goes back to our, it's very interesting because us as Africans think, well, why is he not on the wing for the Springboks, But as a Scottish fan, you're thinking, geez, I'm happy about this. And Ollie Cable coming off the bench, he looked great. He's really playing well. So it is weird because, these players, we're seeing players that I supported as a Stormers fan as a boy who are now playing for Scotland. And it's just weird, but good for them, and good for Scotland, to be fair. Yeah. So, what can you say?
I think the best way to describe it is it's just weird. Like it's cool, but also like I'm concerned we're missing out on those players. So it's weird. It's bittersweet almost. But just a quick topic. Do you think Duan van der Merwe could actually make it as a starting wing in front of either Ches and Colby or Makazolo?
I don't know. It is a tough one, and that's why these players go overseas, to be fair, because the competition here is a lot, and then when you go to Scotland, if you're as good as him, you start every week for Scotland.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, because why would you not have an international career when you could be the best player in a team? So yeah, would he start for Springboks? Well, probably not. So he went to France, he didn't make it there, and now he went to Scotland and he's cracked it. So good for him. He's learned a lot on his journey, and the South Africans playing for Scotland look exceptional.
Yeah, for him as an individual, purely as an individual, he probably made the right choice, because I think he would have been lucky to get on the bench, not because he's a bad player, but just because, you have 2 World Cup winning wings, Ches and Colby, one of the best players in the world, Makazolo as well. So yeah, that was interesting. We got another DM, which we want to read now. Mark, can you read for us?
Sure. So Kaylee Johnson has said, one of my frustrations in finals is the constant erring on the side of caution. I understand that the title is on the line, but if you don't normally play conservatively, it shows with the amount of errors. So, what do you think?
Well, Nick Mallett recently said that, and it's actually a good point, which I never fully thought about. It's also the union's jobs to entertain.
Yeah.
They want to win. Obviously, they want to win. If you're in a playoff final, I don't blame the coaches for changing their game plan to do that. But at the same time, I understand the point that they should entertain. So I think it's about finding a balance. I think some of the teams did have a balance. But for me personally, if I was a coach, I would do the same thing. So
yeah, well, I think also if a team plays entertaining rugby normally, then it's good to become more conservative in a final, but not completely change your whole style, because it can disrupt a lot. And I tend to agree with what Kaylee has to say to a very big extent, because if you're a team that likes to throw the ball around, let's say you have Damien Willemse, and his instinct is to throw that offload, that 50-50 pass. If you tell him not to do it, then what's the point of having him in your team? So I understand your point, and I understand Kaylee's point, and I think it's both interesting. I do think that teams have to change the game in a final, because it's about points, it's not about tries. But if you're good at scoring tries, then why not go and just chuck the ball around? So it's interesting.
Okay, guys, that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. As always, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Anchor, and other major platforms as well. Tell your friends, send it to your friends, leave a comment, give us your thoughts. Please also send your voice notes in. We really enjoyed this segment, responding to you guys. And until next time, cheers, goodbye.
Cheers.